The latest popular uprising in Egypt began on June 30th. The transitional government is now drafting a constitution for the country. At the same time, the streets of Cairo are jammed with protesters. They represent Egypt's polarized politics, those who want Mohamed Morsi reinstated as president and those who support the transition. So can the country move forward in this situation? Joining me now to offer their takes on all of this, Adel Iskandar, a scholar of Arab studies at Georgetown University. His latest book is Egypt in Flux, Essays on an Unfinished Revolution. And Dr. Hooshang Amirahmadi, a public policy professor at Rutgers University and a scholar of Middle Eastern politics. Thank you both for joining us. Why don't I start here in the studio with you, Adel? Just how unfinished is this revolution, and was a coup necessary?
Well, I mean, I think to a large extent, revolutions tend to be ideas, and to accomplish the goals of the revolution, which arguably are freedom, bread, and social justice. That was the demand on the part of the revolutionaries on the 25th of January 2011. And so there have been ups and downs and lulls and valleys and various sort of journeys in the past couple of years. We've had 18 months of military rule, followed by a year of the Muslim Brotherhood rule. And in almost every one of those circumstances, the results have been short of what the revolutionaries and the protesters and the Egyptian public at large have expected and wanted to see. So to a large extent, the revolution has not accomplished its goals just yet. So even though the coup, or what others call a revolutionary coup, I mean, the nomenclature is complicated, and I don't think it's important to really resolve it. At the end of the day, we've got mass protests in favor of the military's intervention, but the majority of people don't want to see the military ruling.
And I want to give Dr. Amirahmadi a chance to jump in. Was a military coup necessary in your estimation?
I don't think so. I think what was necessary was a call for a coalition government. I believe the Muslim Brotherhood did make mistakes. Certainly, they mixed up the relationship between Islam and politics and Islam and the government. Islam in politics is acceptable. Islam in government should not be. And I think they pushed a bit too far in that direction. And I think what the Egyptian liberal and Democrats should have done through protests and others to ask that movement be stopped, and that the mercy will include elements of the opposition, the liberal opposition, as opposed to the Islamic opposition in the government. I think, unfortunately, that opportunity was missed, and the military took upon itself to make a coup, while the popular movement already was strong enough to, I believe, force mercy in correcting direction.
Well, let me ask about the failure of Morsi, because you talked about bread, social justice, freedom. Where did he drop the ball? I know a lot of people were very unhappy with the economy, and that was one of the driving forces. And Dr. Amirahmadi also alluded to the fact that kind of this insular government, it was almost Mubarak all over again.
Yes. I mean, I think Morsi's blunders over the past year came as a surprise to almost all analysts. Nobody expected the Muslim Brotherhood to make this many mistakes. I mean, they could have reached across the aisle to politicians, who disagree with them, perhaps in principle or in ideology, to bring the country together at this very critical juncture. Instead, they rammed forward a constitution that was not conciliatory, that wasn't unanimous, that a lot of Egyptians had a problem with it. The turnout in the constitutional referendum was minimal. The economic circumstances were abysmal. The inability to attract foreign direct investment, or to even convince the international community that Egypt was heading in the right direction economically, not to mention the fact that the discourse of the Muslim Brotherhood has gotten progressively sectarian in the last few months. So attacks against Shia Muslims, attacks against Christians escalated as a result of this sort of hyperbolic discourse from the Brotherhood. So I think, perhaps what the Morsi government did poorly is to even give the slightest impression that they're prepared to reconcile or reach across the aisle, all the way through to the end. I mean, even Morsi in his final speech said basically no concessions whatsoever, and I will defend legitimacy even if it requires that I sacrifice my own blood. So there's an indication that the intransigence of the Morsi government led to the options on the table being nothing more than the military's intervention, as difficult, as problematic, and as unfavorable as that might seem.
Dr. Amirahmadi, I want to ask you about the role the media is playing in all of this, because there's been a lot of criticism of Al Jazeera and some other media outlets as perhaps pushing this and creating this kind of incendiary environment. What's your thought on that?
Well, that's what the media usually does, and that's it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that they are doing this. I think the media needs to be more realistic, and revolutions are revolutions. Revolutions are never peaceful. You cannot change a country in a year. Mubarak's government was in place for 30-some years, and the institutions that he built and the directions that he gave to the country are so solidified. It's really written in stones in many cases, so it's tough to change that. I think the only fault I have for the Morsi government is what the gentleman said, Adel said, that he sort of pointed in the direction of uncompromising, and that was the wrong thing. That was the mistake he made. But I believe the popular movement against Akhwan al-Muslimin, the Muslim Brotherhood, that is, could have succeeded in extracting concessions and moving the revolution to the center. I come from Iran, and I have lived with an Iranian revolution for 33 years. And for 33 years, the streets of Tehran have never been peaceful. There have been war, sanctions, there have been fights within the various factions. In fact, even the government factions are now fighting each other. They could never come together. That's the way revolutions are, unfortunately. And particularly in countries like Iran, Egypt, and the likes that have no developed political culture. There is no democratic culture in the societies, and none of the guys who are calling for democracy, that are saying that they will develop or deliver democracy, none of them are really Democrats themselves. Democracy needs Democrats, and you need time for that to develop.
Well,
you need time to culture to develop. That's why the direction is very important as opposed to result.
Right.
That's why process is important rather than result.
Let me jump in here for just a second, because I want to get Adel's thoughts on this. I know you've talked a lot about the media in Egypt. There are these criticisms that the private broadcasters, state broadcasters have kind of ginned these things up, and actually some people are saying they've provoked a lot of the actions that we saw earlier in the week. Your thoughts?
Well, I think the Morsi government, one of the Morsi government's greatest sort of failures is the ability to polarize Egyptian society, and that fits comfortably within the media spectrum in Egypt. You've got some news organizations, private primarily, that are extremely anti-Muslim Brotherhood and have been rallying people to come out and protest on June 30th with tremendous success, because the turnout was really quite colossal. On the other hand, you've got both the Muslim Brotherhood's broadcasting arms as well as various other Islamist networks that were calling for people to stay home or to rally in favor of Morsi. And really, there's virtually nothing in between. So there's a lot of mobilization, but there's also a tremendous amount of incitement and really some problematic discourses. So hopefully this will, there will be some sort of a draft developed by professionals and journalists and the syndicate and the labor unions in Egypt that will create a basic standard for journalistic practice and professionalism in the country, so that we don't end up with another explosion.
All right. Well, thank you both for joining us. Certainly appreciate it.